Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic: younger people of Reddit. What are you tired of hearing from older generations? You kids and these damn phones. My parents are on their phones more than I am by a lot. Yup, and it's always Facebook and Facebook videos blaring at full volume too. I see you've met my father. I bought the man a pair of AirPods Max for Christmas so no one would have to hear his phone blaring FB videos anymore. They sat unopened until a couple weeks ago when my mom decided to use them to watch TV so she can drown out the sound of the aforementioned videos. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. My parents when I was a teenager in the late 80s. Now I have to tell my parents that I was at GF's parents' place and she told us something generally unbelievable she read about on Instagram, and I casually asked if that was verified to have actually happened, and her mother very sarcastically replied, "Oh, are you one of those fact-checker types? Like that is some sort of insult or something to want to know the truth." I guess my parents and teachers just reinforced the whole don't believe something just because you read it on the internet. Edit, lots of response, I wasn't expecting that. Thanks for engaging the conversation. For anyone making comments about unreliable online fact-checking sites, I was in no way referring to formal fact-checking. I was merely wondering where my GF heard the story, like was it just something relayed second/third hand, or an actual video of the event, or a news report, or what? I don't even remember the story, it just sounded too weird to be true and I wanted to learn more if it was verifiable. That's a prime opportunity to maintain eye contact, express dominance, and answer yes, I am a fact-checker. Because if anyone from the GF on is bothered by facts, you want to know that before you spend Thanksgiving with them for the rest of their lives. I'm 64 and I'm really tired of listening to people my age whine about stuff that younger people do. It definitely was not better when we were kids. A phone isn't that effing hard to figure out. It's not that nobody talks anymore, it's just that nobody wants to talk to you. My grandfather, who's 86, would definitely agree with your first point. He always talks about how his friends would be like, "Don't you miss the good old days?" And he would be like, "Oh, you mean when I worked in an iron ore mine for $4 a day and had to go outside to shit in -20 degrees weather because we didn't have indoor plumbing on the farm?" Yeah, I don't think those days were quite as good as you remember, bud. Edit, to the people commenting something along the lines of what they meant by good old days is back when they could say the N-word and sexually harass women without repercussion, just please move along. This wasn't meant to be a political /social statement. It was an endearing comment by my grandpa about how technology has made life easier. This kind of shit is why Middle America doesn't vote DEM anymore. It's because of holier-than-thou losers like you that have to turn everything political and their association of you with that party. Please just fuck off. Edit, I vote Democrat in every election despite them constantly shooting themselves in the feet with stupidity, because their platform aligns closest with what I personally believe. Most of you have missed my point entirely. Thank you for reaffirming my belief that humanity is a bunch of dumb cunts not worth saving, and I pray for a giant meteor to end this all. Sincerely, Santa Claus. Sounds like my pop. He grew up in an old farmhouse with no indoor plumbing or electricity and has told me stories of waking up in the morning after the fire had went out in the fireplace and having to chisel frozen piss out of a bedpan because it was so cold in the bedroom. Also had holes in the floor large enough to see the chickens walking under the house. What insulation. He said he wouldn't trade his central heat and a /C for anything in the world, and anyone who called it the good old days could fuck off. The phone thing really gets me because nobody taught us how to use it. We just kinda messed around with it and figured it out. It's like they don't even want to try. I ended up working with my neighbor. We sold cars for about 5 years together. Then he retired after 43 years of car sales. Wow. But he was the only older guy at the dealership we didn't have to coddle with all the new technology on vehicles. He just learned it, adapted, and kept selling. Occasionally I'd help him out by explaining something, but it was more how to learn to do it vs just doing it. Also, he didn't care what anyone thought. He wore earplugs to the mandatory meetings. Stop eavesdropping. I'm not eavesdropping, you're just talking loud because you're deaf and I'm not. My father, you only overheard me from the other room, you don't know what I'm actually talking about. Me, I know exactly what you're talking about because I can hear you on the other side of the house. I work with my dad and tell him every day I hear 100% of his conversations since he has them on speakerphone. Could save hours if he stopped briefing me on shit I already know. I'm an older millennial. I have a good job, own a house, am married, and have 2 kids. It is 2022 and at least half the times I hear someone older reference millennials, it's talking about people who are currently the age my cohort was 22 years ago when the millennium was a thing. Apparently. Millennial equals anyone younger than my cohort. Boomer equals anyone older than my cohort. My father, in his mid-70s, had to do pint for an injury, and after every appointment he'd tell us about the wacky things his millennial therapist said or did or wore during the appointment. She was 24, and nothing she said, did, or wore was wacky. Dad. Please. You know who the millennials are. Your own kids who are knocking on 40's door, with kids of our own. Not that 24-year-old pint. Millennials are old enough to have concrete memories of 911. When I was your age we never talked to coloureds or went to their neighbourhoods. Edit, well I guess I'm not the only one who likes to make fun of old-timey racism. Or Reddit really is part of the alt-right pipeline. Realistically I come here to remind myself it's not just my grandparents acting kinda crazy these days. Paid full price with, anti-Semitic term, the seller down. Edit, it's comforting to me, as an old dude, that so many people are unfamiliar with this old expression. That tells me that the awful old expression of I Jude the seller's price down is a dead or dying expression. Just start saving. You'll be able to buy a house in no time. Housing market, we don't do that here. Haha, my friend had saved 50 Kelvin down payment for a house 2 years ago. Still to this day gets outbid for houses going 100 Kelvin over asking. How we can't fix anything ourselves. Then promptly ask us to fix their Wi-Fi, set up their new phone and figure out why their computer is running slow. We can do plenty, we just have a different skill set. No joke, my dad did this time me. I didn't know how to change my tire on my car at 18, he never showed me, complained about it, and told me to figure it out. Not 10 minutes later his Wi-Fi went out and asked me to fix it. I told him to figure it out. My dad did this to me too, when I was growing up. If I didn't know how to do something practical, he'd scoff and say, "Don't you even know how to do this?" When he had never taught me. Thankfully, I learned it to teach myself from Google and YouTube. I'm trying to do better with my own daughter and teaching her everything I think she needs to know and explaining so she knows the reasoning behind why certain things are done. Edit, I just wanted to clarify that even though my dad would comment "Don't you even know that?" I don't think he was being an asshole, as he'd just do what needed to be done for me by himself. He was just really bad at teaching and explaining things, so he'd just do things for me. I hate how we've gone from me getting Facebook as a teenager and my parents being like "Don't believe everything you see on the internet" to them sending me medical research from unverified/irreputable sources. And then get all pissy when we fact check it. And it takes like 5 seconds 5 minutes to prove them wrong. I'm not younger, but I'm fed up with some older people expecting gratitude for all that they have done while taking zero responsibility for the problems that they will leave future generations. Be sure and tell them thank you for your service and then make some other wisecrack when they say they aren't a veteran, like I just assumed from the way you were talking you made those kinds of sacrifices for our great country. I'll be honest, even as a veteran I hate hearing "thank you for your service," lol. I'm tired of people complaining about how younger people are terrible as though they weren't the ones that raised those younger people to be what they are. These millennials and their damn participation trophies. Who the fuck were the ones handing them out? They weren't giving them to themselves as children. The young people always just want to drink and go to parties. 1. No. 2. Don't pretend like you didn't do this too lol. Drink coffee and go to LAN parties. So wild. Seriously. From what we have seen and heard, the 60s and 70s weren't the most conservative years for Americans. LSD and acid ran rampant. Hippie culture and free love. Hitchhiking through the US. Gas, grass, or arse isn't something the younger generation came up with, I'll tell you that. Update. Okay. Okay. I get it. LSD is acid. Fickle is ihor. Update #2, everyone. Please. I didn't mean to start a LSD versus acid war. LSD and acid ran rampant. Wait till they hear about beer and alcohol, or weed and cannabis. Your generation is sensitive and weren't taught hard work. You're literally raised us, how is it our faults? Like when they complain about how kids got participation trophies. Dude, it was your idea, no kid thought up of it. Right. My 9-year-old ass wasn't at the trophy store picking it out. My partner does emergency roadside service, and just this week he responded to a tire change. The guy he met was the father of the owner of the car, and he told my partner my 18-year-old son doesn't even know how to change a tire. Dude, it's your teenage son, maybe you should have taught him. Also, why aren't you changing it then? This was my dad's attitude when I couldn't ride my bike at around 10 years old. He was like, why doesn't he know how to ride a bike? And my mom just went, because you never got a bike for him. That's like my mom complaining that none of her kids knew how to cook. Whose fault is that exactly?